All right, guys. So this is the next portion of the show. We're going to get into an awesome topic, which is light gun games. So this is really just mentioning some standout light gun games that we're familiar with. There wasn't really any rhyme or reason. We just came up with like a list of light gun games that came to mind when we thought about it, and we're going to save the Namco stuff for last, just so you guys know. So Namco is probably the most important company around light gun games, in my opinion. Probably followed closely by Sega, um, you know, with things that we'll
Yeah.
get into also. But Namco, I think, would definitely be at the top of the list. Would you agree?
I would say so because they had a lot of standout light gun games, but and
I
then
mean, they made
followed
the
by
Gun
Sega.
Con also.
Just true. Just true. But we're talking about light gun games. I mean, Matt, you've mentioned several times that you love light gun games, so you should be excited.
I am very excited. Very excited. Let's start in the early days. Let's start for me where it all started for light guns was Duck Hunt, right? It was the Mario game I had, the set I
Hmm.
had Duck Hunt and Mario
And
together.
Mario, yeah.
And for a while, Duck Hunt never got played. Let's be honest. Like Mario was like I didn't. I was like Duck Hunt. I was like, there's Mario. After a while, it's like, all right, what's this other thing? Duck Hunt was awesome, man. Now the clay pigeons, I was never that
Hmm.
crazy about. I got into it a little bit more when I was older and went back and played it.
Hmm.
But as a kid, I only wanted those ducks, man, and that dog, that damn dog.
And the dog popping up.
But
Oh, well, all right. So you talked about Duck Hunt, and okay, so I was a late comer to Nintendo because as everybody knows, I was a Sega boy, so I had the Sega Master System with their light gun. But were there any other light gun games for Nintendo outside of
yeah,
Duck Hunt?
there were. I really didn't play many of them, but there was like Gumshoe.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and like that was really weird because you were like you shot him to make him jump. I think is
Hmm.
what is how it worked. There was a few other ones too, but that's the only other one that I can like really remember
Wasn't there
right
like a
now.
gangster one? Because it's like I could picture the box. It's and it has like a
Hmm.
like an old school gangster on it.
I think I think you might be right. Are you killing drug dealers? Is that what it was?
I don't remember. I'm just going off of memory, and like I said, I'm just trying to remember. And I do remember there was another gun game. I'll think of it.
I feel like that could have been it. That could have been it where you're like killing because there was a whole bunch of this was like this was like the mid to late '80s where the war on drugs was raging. So they were like, you can shoot people as long as they're drug dealers. Just put drug dealers in the game. It'll be fine. But I don't recall. I'm sure there's only like a handful of like in games for the
Yeah.
NES. But the only one I really remember other than Duck Hunt was Gumshoe.
Okay.
What about you? So I was a Nintendo person this time. You were a Sega person, right? So
Hmm.
did you play? I have one of these, but I don't have a light gun for it. Did you play Lethal Enforcers on Genesis?
I did. I did because I remember playing Lethal Enforcer in the arcade, um,
Did you have
and
that
it
blue
was
gun?
I had the blue gun. And you know what? It was fun. And remember it in the arcade? It was modern day. Going around shooting bank robbers and stuff like that. And then it came home, and we talked about arcade ports coming home, and that one wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. And then they did a Lethal Enforcers 2, which it changed time periods, and it was like a western.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right. That's
yeah, it
interesting.
was it was different. Yeah, but yeah, man, Lethal Enforcers. I have fond memories of it.
Was were they good? Like I've never played a like I never had the Lycan on Genesis, so
Hmm.
even though I have a Genesis, I just never played any games in there. Was Lethal Enforcers like a good game for it or
It was a light gun game. It was okay. It did its job. Graphics were a little grainy because in the arcade they were digitized. So try to squeeze all of that into a Genesis cart was tough. But it played okay. It played fine. I'd
cool?
rather play the first one than the second one. The old west type. Uh, uh, it didn't grab me like the first one did.
this wasn't on the dock, but I'm gonna stick with this just because we're around this time frame.
Hmm.
I also I think I know somebody who had one, but I never messed with it. I just thought it was stupid, and I'm sure they only made a couple of games for it. Did you ever use the Super Scope for
Oh, you know
SNES?
what? I was gonna bring that up. It's funny. I was thinking about that. I was like, man, should we talk about the Super Scope?
I mean,
But
no one seemed to give a crap about this thing.
no, I no.
It was like a bazooka,
It
like
was. It was big.
which was cool. Like that was a cool idea, but it was also like very like, what do you point this bazooka at? Like a gun is like so much easier to use, you know.
Yeah,
Did you play anything with that Super Scope?
I I did not. I did not buy one. I saw it. I had no interest in it. I
I
passed
think they
on
made
that.
like 2 or 3 games for it. I really think that was like all they had.
Yeah. So I guess we consider the Super Scope like a game.
I mean, the NES like Zapper is like
Hmm.
iconic. So I'm sure they wanted to like recreate that, but then they made this bazooka and it was just like, yeah, whatever.
Man, it's funny because I still get people coming in to level up all the time looking for Duck Hunt and the Zapper.
And how many people come in there? Do you have a Super Scope? And how
We had a Super Scope. We sold it, but it's not something that comes in on a regular. We get more Zappers, and the Zappers. It's funny because the Zappers will get in a run, and we'll have a bunch of them, and they'll sit for a minute, but then everybody comes in at one time. Seems like, and then they sell out like immediately.
I bet that's like a go-to. If you're there picking up an NES, you're like,
Hmm.
you got that Duck Hunt, you got that Zapper. I bet you
Yeah,
get asked that all the time.
a lot of people ask for Dunk Hunt all the time. It's because it's what they remember.
Yep. I want you to talk about this one because I don't know anything about this. So explain to the people and me because this is kind of a lesser known one. What the hell is Elemental Gearbolt?
Oh man. All right. So Elemental Gearbolt I bought on a whim for PlayStation 1. It
Okay,
had a
so this
shiny
would have been
cover.
was this like the first gun con then? Like this was
It wasn't
compatible with
even a
that?
gun con. It was just a light gun game. I don't know. I can't even remember what I think Mad Catz put a gun out
Oh,
at the
Jesus
time.
God. Oh.
Your favorite company. But the box was shiny and it caught my attention because it was very anime based, like the
Mhm.
cover and the art and everything. So I kind of, you flash something shiny and I'm buying it automatically. Um, but it was a light gun anime based RPG shooter. That's the best way I can explain it. It was,
But
it was,
how?
it was.
Did you get like upgrade trees and you're picking your upgrades by shooting the screen or something?
that
Like
enemies come and go, and then you got skill points. At the end of each level, and it had like a sci-fi fantasy type of feel to it. It's man, I haven't played that one in such a long time. But when we were talking about like gun games, that stood out for me. I was like, oh my god, Elemental Gearbolt.
I would
I
have
used to play with my son, like because they were little, so I had this thing on guns in the house. So it's like we played it on a controller, um,
mm,
and it was fun. I mean, me and him were playing, and he loved it. Like I said, it had that anime feel, so he gravitated towards it just like I did, and yeah, man, it's one of those hidden rarities that you don't see too often. Nobody really talks about, but yeah.
I would have looked at that in a store and just kept on walking right down the aisle. Like that would have not been, even though I like Lego games, that would not. I would have given it a chance. Don't get me wrong. If you were like, here, check this out, I would have checked it out. I would have never gave him money for that game though. It's like
Well,
out of my
well,
wheelhouse.
that's the thing. It's like when you look at it, you don't really know it's a light gun game until you start playing it. Just like there was another anime based. It had an anime based cover, Project Horned Owl. You remember that?
No,
Oh my god!
what the hell was that on?
It was PlayStation 1. It was another light gun game on PlayStation 1. It just popped into my head now. So
One day I'll have to go down that rabbit hole and just start trying to get these weird PlayStation. If they're not like hundreds of dollars, I'll find these weird PlayStation 1 games and start checking out these odd light gun games that I'd never played before.
Yeah, there were a few. PlayStation had a few that just kind of you know popped up and like disappeared like just as fast.
That's a cool subset to actually collect for. Like, if I don't have a PS1 gun, I have PS2 gun cons. I have
Mm-hmm.
an Xbox gun con. I have all sorts of stuff, but I don't have PS1's light gun. If I
Mm-hmm.
got that, I think I would be forced to go down that rabbit hole of trying to find like the complete subset of light gun games for PS1.
For
I think that would be really
PS1.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah,
yeah.
and then if I'm not mistaken, there was another light gun game for PlayStation 1 that pops into my head is Resident Evil Survivor.
Yep,
Now
yep.
you remember
Survivor.
that one, right?
I can see it in my head. I know the cover of that one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember clearly, but if I do remember correctly, that game was butt. Was it not?
Yeah, it was. It
People
was
hated that game.
it was not the best, but it was you were just a civilian trying to shoot your way out of Raccoon City when the events of Resident Evil 1 and 2 were going on. And it was trying to be House of the Dead, with the Resident Evil logo on it.
That's the problem though, because I think a bunch of people probably bought it like, "Oh, new Resident Evil game." Not they just saw the cover. They didn't like read about it. They didn't do
Correct.
anything, and they were like, "This is not Resident Evil. Like, this is a light gun game."
Exactly. Yep.
Was there a light gun compatible with it? Could you use GunCon with it, or did you have to use the controller? Do you know?
Ooh, man. No, it was light gun compatible. So I think you were able to use like the gun con and Mad Catz, but whoever else made a light gun.
Every time you say Mad Catz, a little piece of me dies inside. Just so you know that. God, I hate that company.
Oh man.
All right, cool. So there was Resident Evil Survivor. There was also on PS2. There was Dead Aim. Now, Dead Aim, I actually think I own. I
Oh
don't
man,
have it
that was
here.
great.
I don't have it here with me. I remember picking it up because at that during the PS2 era, I was like all over light gun games. As you guys can see behind me, there's light gun games to both sides of me. Love light gun games, and I'm almost positive I did pick up Dead Aim, but I just never played it. And I heard it was obviously much better than Survivor was. Did you check it out, or what did you think?
I did, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. It was good. I mean, it was. And again, I don't want to keep saying it, but it was very. They were trying to be House of the Dead with a Resident Evil skin.
Did this one have two
Um,
player, or am I mistaken?
yes,
Okay,
yes, yep.
that's pretty significant.
Man, I have now. You want me to go back and like play these games all over again? Pull them out and play them. It was good. It was, but again, it's a light gun game, so you can only go but so far and do so much with a light gun game. But it was still enjoyable to play because there are some out there that are no fun to play at all.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. There's definitely a bunch of them. Um,
Oh yeah.
do you remember if or do you remember what aspects of Resident Evil they incorporated into the game? Like, did you have to save like by shooting a typewriter or something, or like was it
Oh man, you know what? From what I remember, I don't even think there was a save. I think you had to
was it
play
just
it all in.
levels? Was it
I
like
think
one
it was
level at
just
a time?
one level at a time.
Okay.
There were tyrants, there were lickers. Uh, you had to. Of course, there were zombies. You had to shoot, but it was just. It didn't follow like the main story. Again, you were just a random person trying to shoot your way out of Raccoon City.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. It was good. From what I remember playing it, I enjoyed it. I mean, I still own it. Haven't touched it in years, but
Yeah, the next time I go back to my parents' house, I need to see if that's in my PS2 collection because I don't have my entire PS2 collection here, and I think that I'm pretty sure that game is over there. So I need to bring that back with me. Now, another one from back in the day. Uh, Not too far back. Well, never mind. It's from pretty far back in the day. Sega Saturn had some notable stuff, and I mean, Virtual Cop. I played the crap out of, man. I loved Virtual Cop. Uh, my friend had a Sega Saturn, and
Mhm.
he didn't have like a bunch of games. He had like a handful of games, like maybe like somewhere between like 5 to 10 games, and we played the crap out of certain ones. And this game was like constantly on. I mean, I could play just the first level of Virtual Cop over and over again. It's just a like on game, man. It's fun. You gotta not shoot the civilians. You gotta shoot the
Mhm.
bad guys, probably drug dealers, because still in like the mid '90s at this point. So you know,
Yeah, man, Virtual Cop was huge in the arcade. I remember walking into the arcade and seeing it for the first time, and it looked good. It
reload,
was fun.
reload.
It was fun. Yeah, and then when it came home, it was like, oh God, how's this going to translate? And it actually turned out pretty good.
Yeah, it did. The home version was good. I did play it in the arcade as well, and that was always, dude. That's a go to. If that's in an arcade, like let's hop
Mhm.
on it, man. Give me that Virtual Cop. Hell yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Virtual Cop. Yeah, Sega. Sega did no wrong with their Lycan games because right after you had Virtual Cop 1 and then you had Virtual Cop 2
hmm
and then from there you had House of the Dead.
I mean, this is a big one. House of the Dead
That's
was like, I mean, if you're talking like top like on games, that's for a lot of people that'll be like number one, right? Or like
mhm.
if the House of the Dead isn't their first series, it's maybe their second, behind something
Yep.
else that we'll talk about shortly. But I mean, this is like pinnacle stuff right here. All the House of the Deads are great, but I mean, the first one was the most, no, you never played anything like that before. It hits you in a different way. Where do you remember the first time you played this? Was it an arcade? Was it on a home console?
It was in the arcade. It was I never played the first House of the Dead on the home console because it came out for Saturn and I passed on it. And I didn't play it at home until the Dreamcast when they released part 2.
Mm,
But I remember playing it in the arcade. Oh, it was great. It was
yeah,
great. And then the second one came out, and it was like frame for frame identical on the Dreamcast to the arcade.
much like you, I never played these. I actually never played a House of the Dead. No, I can't say that. Now I have. I think I played three on a home console. I think I played two. I don't think I ever played one on a home console. But for the most part, these were arcade games for me. Like this is something you
Hmm.
played in the arcade, grabbing those two controllers.
So yeah, so you had House of the Dead 1, 2 for Dreamcast, 3 came out for Xbox.
That was an exclusive Xbox game, correct?
It
At that
was.
time.
It was. And then recently they re-released it because I just bought it for Xbox One, like the remake of House of the Dead, and then they released it on Switch also.
Yeah, I have the Switch version. I specifically got the Switch version because you can use
Hmm.
the Joy-Con. Like
Hmm.
actually, this is a game where you want to use motion controls. So I did pick this one up on Switch specifically for that.
Yeah, it's still around, man, and it's still popular.
Yeah, I hope that one did well and they make a fourth one because it's been too long. House of the Dead 3 was on
Yeah.
the original Xbox, dude.
Hmm.
Original, what was that? 20 years ago, something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah. We have there's I guess, I don't want to call it a retro arcade, but it started out as a retro arcade. It's called a Lucky Snake. It's down here on the boardwalk in the showboat.
Mhm.
And they have like the new House of the Dead game. I want to say it's House of the Dead 4,
Oh, there is
but
a new one.
they also have 2, and people are always on them.
They're fun, man. There's so when there was like a guy who had like a private collection of arcade and pinball machines out here. He sold them all a few years ago. It was called the Museum of Pinball. It was out in Banning, California. It was awesome. Anyways, he had like 500 arcade machines, 500 pinball machines, and my wife and I went there one weekend because he would open it up to the public twice a year, and you would pay like whatever, and everything was set to free to play. So we went in
Mhm.
there and we played a few things, and my friend's daughter was with us too, and her and Claudia played Ninja Assault, which I have back here. They played the arcade version for like an hour straight. Like just loved that game. And that's the beauty of it, dude. Light gun games are so much fun. They're so easy. You don't have to teach anybody anything. Just point and shoot. And like this is how you reload. That's all you need to know.
Yep. Yep.
Man, it's I need to get an arcade machine. Is what I need, Wes. I need to
There you
get one
go,
of these,
man.
like a legit
Okay,
one.
I just got to go totally off the cuff because it just popped in my head. Now, Silent Scope, light gun game or no? Because it was a light gun game in the arcade because you had the sniper rifle. But from what I remember for PlayStation 2, I don't know if that was light gun compatible.
I mean, just because it wasn't an arcade, I would have to classify it as one. It was their own stupid fault. If that thing didn't use a light gun like on the home console, that was their own stupid
Mm-hmm.
fault. They deserve to lose sales because of that. Like even if Namco made the gun con, it's like, dude, just license the rights to make it gun con
Mm-hmm.
compatible. Like that's all you had to do is be like, hey Namco, here's a little piece of the money. Let me use your gun.
Well, because the whole thing with Silent Scope is you had to have like the sniper rifle because you had to like look through it.
True. Okay.
You had to
Okay.
look through it and like zoom in, and so I'm like, oh man, was there a light gun for that, or was that like controller only? Because in the arcade, you have a light gun.
I bet you it was a controller on the consoles. I can't imagine that being the case. You know, especially with the type of gun that you're describing. But
Mm-hmm.
that is gnarly having that in the arcade, like a scope. That's sick.
Yeah, it is. Just a thought. It just popped into my head. I was like, you know what? Is that considered a light gun game?
I think it's a light gun game at the end of the day.
Okay.
What about this other one? I don't know anything about this one. Confidential Mission. What is that?
Oh, oh well, yeah, man. Another Sega great. You know what? It was the skin of Virtual Cop. Well, the essence of Virtual Cop with like a James Bond skin on it.
Oh, that sounds
Uh,
rad. What system was that on?
it was on the Dreamcast.
Ooh,
It was in the arcade, and then it came to the Dreamcast. But it was very espionage, spy type theme to it. But it was a light gun game,
that
and
sounds
it
like
was
it's
very,
my alley.
very Virtual Cop, very Virtual Cop in the play mechanics, but graphically, or aesthetic wise, it was like a James Bond.
Got you, got
So
you.
combine the two, you got Confidential Mission.
I would have to go and check out that because that's another console that I don't have a light gun for. I don't have the Dreamcast one. I think the only reason I didn't buy it was because you know, well, two they never released the official Dreamcast gun here, which we talked about before. And two,
Nope, they did not.
there was like what 3 or 4 games for it. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that Confidential Mission
Yeah,
sounds really cool.
yeah, you would like it, man. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. I said, Sega has that track record of the arcade, so you knew what you were going to get.
Oh, if you guys happen to get that at a certain game store, you'll have to
I'll
let me know.
I'll keep my eyes open for you. All right, Matt. So now we're getting into probably your favorite series of light gun games because Namco were the kings of light gun, and I would say maybe just a notch below Sega. Some may argue, say they were better than Sega, but Namco gave us Time Crisis, man.
Look, Sega's great. I'm not trying to take anything away from Sega, but these were the games that I loved the most. And this was they also made the Gun Con, which is significant for me. Uh, yeah, Time Crisis was huge in the arcades. That's the first place I played it. I'm almost positive I played it in a movie theater for the first time. I think at some point every movie theater in the country had either Time Crisis 1 or 2 in it. I think
Oh, without a doubt.
if you were a movie theater in the late '90s or early 2000s, you had to have Time Crisis in your movie theater. It had to be there because it was in every one that I ever went to, and I played it every single time. But these eventually came to PlayStation, which is where I was like obsessed with buying them. Now you're probably crazy, Matt, because you bought the ones there was ones without the guns, right? But I constantly bought the ones with the guns because I wanted to make sure I had extra guns in case one broke. So I have four
Smart man, smart man.
have four relatively somewhat used, but pretty in good condition. Newish guns back here. Time Crisis 2 and 3 are on this side, and then on this side is Vampire Knight and Ninja Assault, and they're all fantastic games. Now, Time Crisis, of course, is like your cop shooter. It's Namco's virtual cop, essentially, is what Time
Hmm.
Crisis is. That's the easiest way for me to describe it without going into any kind of full detail. Then you have Vampire Knight and Ninja Assault. Ninja Assault is a better game than Vampire Knight. Ninja Assault is fantastic. Vampire Knight is also really cool because there's vampires, but the dialogue is an atrocity humanity. It's like the worst dialogue you could ever imagine. It's like I remember playing it and just like laughing, like, "Oh my god, I can't believe it's like so bad, man. It's terrible."
Look, House of the Dead had horrible dialogue too. But you're not playing
Fair
the games
enough.
for the dialogue, for the story.
No, and to be fair, I did have a great time with Vampire Knight. I want to say that I beat that game, or like I played the hell out of that game, despite its dialogue.
Yeah,
Uh,
I remember playing it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. But you know what? I don't remember Vampire Knight in the arcade though.
I don't remember it in the arcade either. And if it was an arcade game, it was like much, smaller. Maybe it was a Japanese release because these voice actors, like I'm almost positive it was like English
Hmm.
dubs over Japanese voices. Like I'm almost positive that's what it was. So maybe it was like popular in Japan, and they were just like, well, let's try to make some money in the U.S. And it bombed in the
Okay.
arcade, so that maybe they brought it to PS2.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was an arcade brought home or if it originated at home because I don't remember Vampire Knight at all in the arcade. I remember Ninja Assault, which was great in
Ninja
its own
Assault was
right.
fantastic, dude. Like Ninja Assault is Time Crisis is really fun, really fun. Ninja Assault's probably my favorite life in game. Love that game. House of the Dead's fantastic,
Wow.
but Ninja Assault is like really. If it's not my number one, it's like my number two for
Oh
sure.
wow. Okay. Like I said, we know you love your light gun game, so
Absolutely. So those are some of Namco's ones. Again, Time Crisis. There's Time Crisis 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's one called Crisis Zone, something so stupid like that. But they're all pretty. The Time Crisis ones are all pretty
hmm
good.
hmm
You want a spectacular one? Go find yourself a Ninja Assault.